My ex-husband lied in court, saying I was mentally unstable to win the house. His lawyer said she doesn't even understand how equity works. He didn't know I'd paid off the house in full before the divorce and hid the receipt in our prenup's appendix which stated. I guess I should start from the very beginning, back when I met Jack. We were both living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I was 27, working full-time as a nurse at a local hospital, and Jack was a 33-year-old real estate agent with a big smile and a louder mouth. He knew how to light up a room, and honestly, that's what drew me in. I was shy, cautious, always thinking before I spoke, and here was this man who walked into a room and made everyone turn to look at him. It was intoxicating at first. When we started dating, he'd make grand gestures, flowers sent to my work, surprise weekend getaways, expensive dinners. I thought it was love. I thought it was real. But even in those early days, I noticed things. Jack would leave the check to me sometimes when we went out, always had an excuse. Oh, I left my wallet in the car, or, I'll get the next one, babe. And then there was the way he talked about money. It was always about his money. He'd say things like, once I close this big deal, we'll finally be set. Or, you're lucky you've got a stable job, nurses don't have to worry about the market. He made me feel like my steady income wasn't impressive enough. I'd brush it off because I loved him. When we got married, Jack insisted on a prenup. At the time, I didn't think much of it. He said, it's just standard, babe. Just in case. Protects us both. I signed it because I trusted him. He handled the lawyer, I just signed the papers. Looking back now, I see how much of a fool I was. But I wasn't stupid, not entirely. When I signed that prenup, I made sure to add a small appendix with a list of my personal assets, just in case. I even included a clause that said any personal debts or payments made solely by me remained mine alone. Jack didn't care. He thought it was cute that I wanted to be organized. The house was my dream. We bought it 3 years into our marriage. I pushed for it. Jack wasn't too sure at first. That's a big mortgage, babe, he said. But I was the one who made the down payment, the one who paid the mortgage month after month. Jack never really knew how much was left on the loan because he wasn't involved. He just assumed we'd be paying it off for the next 20 years. But I was smart about it. I cut corners where I could. Picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Said no to vacations. Ate out less. I paid off that house in full 3 years ago, before we even started talking about divorce. I remember sitting in the bank lobby that day, holding the final receipt in my hands, feeling like I could finally breathe. It felt like a victory for me, not for us. And I kept that receipt. I slipped it into the appendix of the prenup, the one Jack had signed without reading. Just in case. Fast forward to last year. Jack had been acting distant for months, long hours at work, sudden weekend trips he wouldn't explain, always on his phone. I thought maybe he was just stressed. I wanted to believe that. But one night, he left his phone unlocked on the nightstand, and I saw the truth. Text after text with a woman named Cassie. Photos of them at bars, on boats, in hotels. Him telling her she was the real woman he needed, that I was just a nag who didn't get it. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I didn't confront him right away. I waited, gathering evidence. When I finally asked him about it, he barely even reacted. He just said, I'm not happy. I think we should separate. Like it was some business deal, not the end of our marriage. A month later, I got served. Divorce papers. Jack was going after everything, half my retirement, the house, spousal support. His lawyer, this arrogant guy named Alan, was brutal in court. They painted me as unstable. Jack even said I'd had episodes where I was emotional and irrational. He brought up that one time I cried after a 12-hour shift when I lost a patient. Alan said I clearly lacked the financial understanding to manage a house on my own. I remember sitting in the courtroom, listening to them talk about me like I was some incompetent child. Alan smirked at me and said, "She doesn't even understand how equity works." I wanted to scream. But I stayed quiet. After that hearing, I went home, sat at the dining room table, and stared at the prenup. My hands were shaking. I felt sick. But I remembered. The appendix. The receipt. I pulled it out, unfolded it, stared at the date, paid in full. I called my lawyer the next morning. His eyes widened when I showed him. "This changes everything," he said. When we walked into the next hearing, I could feel the shift in the air. My lawyer handed the judge the prenup and the receipt. Jack's face went pale. Alan tried to argue it was irrelevant and outdated. The judge wasn't having it. He asked Jack directly, "Did you know the house was fully paid off by your wife 3 years ago?" Jack stumbled. Said he thought it was still under mortgage. Alan tried to cover, but it was clear, they had no idea. They'd built their whole case on the assumption that the house still had a mortgage, that I was some clueless woman. The judge ordered a full review of our finances. That's when the rest of Jack's secrets started coming out. The joint account withdrawals. The business expenses that were really dinners and gifts for Cassie. The credit card charges in Miami and Las Vegas. The whole thing started crumbling. The judge ordered the financial review, and Jack's smug little world started to fall apart. It wasn't just the house anymore. When the forensic accountant dug into our accounts, it was like peeling back the layers of a rotten onion. There were charges from luxury hotels in Miami, New York, and Vegas. Gifts from Cartier, Gucci, and Tiffany's. A new set of golf clubs that cost over $3,000. Private dinners at steak houses I'd never even heard of. And then there were the wire transfers, thousands of dollars sent to some consulting firm that didn't exist. Turns out, Jack had been funneling our joint savings into a side account for over a year. Not just that, he'd been paying for Cassie's apartment. Cassie wasn't just some fling. She was a 25-year-old bartender he'd been seeing for over a year, and Jack had moved her into a fancy downtown loft, using our money. I felt sick. The worst part was, Jack wasn't even subtle about it. The emails and text records showed he'd been bragging to Cassie about how he'd get the house, bleed me dry, and start fresh. His exact words in one message were, "Once I get the house and the money, she won't have a leg to stand on. She's too emotional to fight back. She's got no clue how any of this works." No clue, huh? At the next hearing, my lawyer laid it all out in front of the judge. The receipts, the transfers, the emails, the texts, everything. Jack's lawyer tried to object, saying the texts were private conversations and taken out of context. The judge wasn't buying it. That's when Jack lost it. Right there in court, he stood up and shouted, "This is bullshit. I'm the one who brought the money into this marriage. I should get the house. She's just a nurse, she doesn't know anything about real estate." The courtroom went dead silent. You could hear the judge's pen drop. The judge told him to sit down. Jack's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But it wasn't over yet. The next day, I started getting messages. From Cassie. First, a smug DM on Instagram, "Hope you're happy, bitch. You're ruining his life." Then a series of voicemails, sobbing, screaming, threatening. She told me I was stealing her future, that I was jealous because she's younger and hotter, that I could never give Jack what he needed. I saved them all. But then it got worse. One night, I came home late from work and found my car's windshield smashed. A brick had been thrown through it, and a note was taped to it that said, "You'll regret this." I called the cops, but they couldn't do much, no cameras, no witnesses. I had a sick feeling it was Cassie or one of her friends. The next week, I noticed someone following me home from work. A dark SUV parked across the street from my house at night. I couldn't prove it, but I knew it was Jack, or Cassie, trying to intimidate me. I felt like I was being stalked. But I didn't back down. I hired a private investigator. I told him I needed everything. Who Jack was talking to, where the money was going, what Cassie's real story was. And what we found. Cassie wasn't just some innocent girl. She had a record. An arrest for assault, a restraining order from an ex, and some shady online businesses tied to her name. She'd been involved in a small-time scam ring a few years ago. Jack wasn't her first target. But the real kicker? Jack had signed over power of attorney to Cassie on some of his private accounts. He was so sure he was winning the house and the divorce, he was trying to set up a future with her, and she was quietly draining him dry. While Jack was busy trying to destroy me, Cassie was busy emptying his pockets. And I wasn't going to stop until every single one of them got exactly what they deserved. The day of the final hearing, I walked into that courtroom with my head high. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing flashy, but enough to show I wasn't some fragile woman they could steamroll. Jack looked like hell. He was pale, bags under his eyes, suit rumpled. Cassie wasn't there. Turns out she'd stopped answering his calls a week before. The forensic accountant laid it all out. Jack had stolen over $70,000 from our joint accounts. The records of Cassie draining his private accounts were presented too, showing wire transfers, withdrawals, and even a bounced check for a car lease Cassie had signed in Jack's name. The judge was stone-faced. When it came time for Jack's lawyer to speak, Alan tried to push back, saying it was unfair to consider Jack's relationship with Cassie in the financial division. The judge leaned forward and said, "Your client has committed financial fraud, misappropriated funds, and perjured himself in this courtroom. If you want to argue fairness, I suggest you reconsider your position." Alan went silent. The judge ruled, the house was 100% mine, free and clear. Jack owed me full restitution for the money he stole, plus legal fees. Jack was ordered to pay back taxes and penalties for misusing joint funds. And as a cherry on top, the judge referred Jack's case for criminal investigation for perjury and financial misconduct. Jack's face crumbled. He tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. "You've already done enough damage, sir. This court is adjourned." I stood up and left the courtroom without looking back. But it didn't stop there. 2 months later, I got a call from my PI. Cassie had been arrested, again. She'd been scamming another guy in a different state, got caught trying to forge checks, and when the police searched her apartment, they found drugs, fake IDs, and paperwork linking her to multiple fraud cases, including the one with Jack. Jack? Oh, he lost everything. The criminal investigation moved fast. He was charged with perjury, fraud, and misappropriation of funds. His real estate license was revoked. He couldn't sell a shack if he tried. He had to sell his car to pay back what he owed me, and after that, he declared bankruptcy. Last I heard, he was living in a small rented room on the outskirts of town, working at a used car lot. No more flashy watches. No more fancy trips. Cassie had wiped him clean and vanished. But here's the part that still makes me smile, that house? The one he fought so hard for? I sold it. For cash. Got a great price too. $50,000 above market because of the upgrades I had done on my own. And with that money, I bought a small condo outright. No mortgage, no debt. Just mine. And I took a long vacation. When I got back, I saw a message in my inbox, from Jack. It was pathetic. He said he was sorry for how things went, that he missed me, and he hoped maybe we could talk. I didn't respond. I didn't even open the message fully. I just sat back, took a sip of wine, and smiled. Because in the end, Jack thought I didn't understand equity. But I understood everything. And I made sure he paid for every single lie.